This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Max and Mia podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Mia. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our show, especially with all the podcasts available out there.
Absolutely. It's always great to connect with our amazing listeners from all around the world. You know, we get messages from people in so many different countries, and it just makes our day every single time. How are you doing today, Mia?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. Actually, I had quite an interesting morning. I went to this new coffee shop downtown. You know, the one that just opened last month? And the barista was so incredibly friendly. We ended up chatting for about 10 minutes about everything from the weather to her favorite books.
Oh, that sounds absolutely lovely. I love those unexpected conversations that just happen naturally. Speaking of conversations, I had a really funny experience yesterday at the grocery store. I was trying to find the pasta aisle, and I must have looked completely lost because I asked this employee for help. But instead of just pointing me in the right direction, he actually walked me all the way there and even recommended his favorite marinara sauce.
That's so incredibly sweet. People can be really kind, can't they? You know, Max, it's interesting how these little daily interactions can make such a huge difference in our day. Sometimes a simple conversation with a stranger can completely change your mood.
Exactly. And you know what I've noticed over the years? Sometimes these conversations happen so naturally and smoothly, but other times, well, let's be completely honest here. Sometimes we struggle to find just the right words or expressions to say exactly what we mean.
Oh, I totally get that. Even as native English speakers, there are definitely moments when we want to express something very specific, but we just can't think of the perfect phrase or the most natural way to say it.
Right. And I can only imagine it's even more challenging when you're learning English as a second language. That's actually something I've been thinking about quite a lot lately, especially after talking to some of our international listeners.
You know what, Max? That's a perfect way to introduce today's topic. We thought it would be super helpful to share some essential phrases and expressions that can really make your English conversations flow much more smoothly and naturally.
Today we're going to explore 25 phrases that are absolutely crucial for everyday English conversations. These aren't just boring textbook expressions that sound formal. They're the real deal that native speakers actually use all the time in casual conversations.
So let's jump right into our first phrase. Max, what do you think about starting with, "What's the catch?" I think this is such a practical one.
Oh, that's a brilliant choice, Mia. "What's the catch?" is such an incredibly useful expression that you'll hear everywhere. Basically, it means you're asking if there's a hidden problem or a secret downside to something that seems way too good to be true.
Exactly. It's like when someone offers you something that sounds absolutely amazing, but you're naturally suspicious because it sounds almost too perfect. You're essentially asking, okay, what's wrong with this deal? What aren't you telling me?
Right. For example, imagine your friend calls you up and says, "Hey, I found this gorgeous apartment right in the city center for only $500 a month." You would probably respond with, "What's the catch?" because that price seems incredibly low for that location.
That's such a perfect example. I actually used this exact phrase just last week. My neighbor offered to babysit my kids for absolutely free while I went shopping for the entire afternoon. I was like, what's the catch? Because usually she charges me at least $20 an hour.
And what was the actual catch in that particular case?
Well, it turns out she needed someone to walk her dog later that evening because she had dinner plans. So there was definitely a little favor involved, but it was completely fair and reasonable.
See, that's exactly how this phrase works in real-life situations. We use it when we're being naturally cautious about offers or deals that seem too generous. It's not necessarily rude or offensive. It's just being smart and careful.
Absolutely. You might also hear this phrase a lot in business situations. Like if a salesperson says, "This phone plan gives you unlimited everything for just $20 a month," you'd probably ask, "What's the catch?" Because phone companies usually have all sorts of hidden fees and restrictions.
That's such a great point. And the tone is really important here, isn't it? You're not being mean or accusing anyone of lying. You're just being careful and asking for complete information before making a decision.
Exactly. It shows you're definitely interested, but also practical and responsible. You want to know all the important details before you commit to anything.
Perfect. Now let's move to our second phrase. I'm not buying it. Mia, this one's really interesting because it has absolutely nothing to do with shopping or purchasing anything.
You're absolutely right, Max. When someone says I'm not buying it, they mean they don't believe what you're telling them. They think you might be lying, exaggerating, or making weak excuses.
Exactly. Like if your teenager comes home 2 hours late and says, "Sorry, Mom, the bus completely broke down and we had to wait forever," you might think, "I'm not buying it," because you suspect they were probably just hanging out with friends somewhere.
That's such a perfect example. I remember when my little brother was in high school, he used to say his homework got eaten by the dog whenever he didn't finish it on time. My parents definitely weren't buying that ridiculous story.
Poor dog always getting blamed for everything. But that's exactly how we use this expression, when something sounds really fishy, suspicious, or completely unbelievable. It's like saying, "I don't believe you at all," but in a much more casual, everyday way.
Right. And speaking of things we might not believe or trust, let's talk about "that's not really up my alley." This phrase is all about personal interests, skills, and areas of expertise.
Oh, I absolutely love this expression. It means something isn't your particular area of expertise, interest, or comfort zone. Like, if someone asks me to fix their computer or troubleshoot technical problems, I'd honestly say, "That's not really up my alley because I'm absolutely terrible with technology."
Exactly. It's such a polite, professional way to say you're not the right person for a particular job or task. I use it constantly. When friends ask me about cooking fancy gourmet meals or baking complicated desserts, I say, "That's really not up my alley. I can barely make toast without burning it."
Let's just say it's much nicer and more diplomatic than bluntly saying, "I can't do that," or "I'm bad at that," isn't it? It sounds more professional and definitely less harsh or negative.
Absolutely. It gives you a graceful way out while still being helpful. Now, here's one I hear constantly in business meetings and professional situations. "Let me sleep on it." Max, what's your take on this particular phrase?
Oh, this is such an incredibly useful expression. It means you need some time to think carefully about a decision before giving your final answer. You're not rejecting the idea or proposal completely. You just want to consider it thoughtfully and thoroughly.
Right. Like when someone offers you a new job opportunity, you might say, "This sounds really interesting and exciting, but let me sleep on it," because it's obviously a huge decision that needs serious thought and consideration.
I actually used this exact phrase just yesterday. My friend wanted me to go on an expensive weekend trip to the mountains, but I needed to check my work schedule and my budget first. "Let me sleep on it" was absolutely perfect Because I was definitely interested but needed time to figure out the logistics.
It's so practical and shows maturity. And it demonstrates that you're responsible about making important decisions instead of just jumping into things impulsively. Now, let's switch to something much more positive and encouraging. I'm all ears.
I absolutely love this expression. It means you're completely ready to listen carefully and attentively to whatever someone has to say. You're giving them your complete, undivided attention and showing genuine interest.
If a friend calls you and says they have some really big, important news to share, you might enthusiastically say, "I'm all ears," to show you're excited and ready to hear everything.
It's such a warm, encouraging, and inviting phrase. Like when my teenage daughter wants to tell me about her complicated day at school with all the drama and friendship issues, I always say, "I'm all ears, sweetie," and she immediately knows I'm really listening and care about what she's saying.
That's absolutely beautiful. It creates such a safe, welcoming space for communication. And here's another really positive one that I hear all the time. You crushed it. This is all about celebrating someone's incredible success and achievements.
Yes, it means someone did an absolutely amazing, outstanding job at something challenging. Like if your friend gives a really impressive presentation at work that goes perfectly, you'd enthusiastically say, "You totally crushed it up there."
I hear this expression constantly in sports situations too. When someone plays exceptionally well during a game, their teammates might say, "You absolutely crushed it out there." It's so encouraging and builds confidence.
It's such an energetic, enthusiastic way to give genuine praise and recognition. It's much more exciting and impactful than just saying "good job" or "well done," don't you think?
Definitely. It shows real enthusiasm and makes the person feel truly appreciated. Now, let's talk about a phrase that helps us clarify our intentions and avoid misunderstandings. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, this is incredibly important for clear communication. We use this when we want to make absolutely sure people don't misunderstand or misinterpret what we're about to say. It's like a gentle warning that we're not trying to be negative or critical.
Exactly. For example, you might say, "Don't get me wrong, I really like Sarah as a person, but she tends to talk way too much during our team meetings." You're clarifying that you're not attacking Sarah's character personally.
Right. It helps you give honest, constructive feedback without sounding mean, harsh, or unnecessarily critical. I use it all the time when giving my opinion about movies. Don't get me wrong, the acting was absolutely brilliant, but I found the overall story pretty confusing and hard to follow.
It's such a diplomatic, tactful phrase that helps maintain good relationships while still being honest. Speaking of easy decisions that don't require much thought, let's discuss it's a no-brainer.
This means a decision is so completely obvious and straightforward that you don't need to think much about it at all. The right choice is crystal clear and undeniable.
Perfect. Like if someone offers you a significantly better job with much higher pay, better benefits, and shorter working hours, you definitely say, "It's a no-brainer? Of course I'll take it."
Or when you're choosing between taking a sunny, relaxing beach vacation in Hawaii and staying home during a cold, miserable winter, that's definitely a no-brainer for most people.
Ha! I can absolutely see why. Now let's talk about it's not worth the hassle. This is all about avoiding unnecessary trouble and complications in our daily lives.
Right. Hassle basically means trouble, inconvenience, or annoying complications. So when something requires way too much effort, time, or energy for very little benefit or reward, we say it's simply not worth the hassle.
Like if returning a cheap $5 item to the store requires driving all the way across town, waiting in long lines, and filling out complicated paperwork, you might reasonably think it's really not worth the hassle and just keep the item.
Exactly. I feel this way about arguing with customer service representatives sometimes. If it's going to take several hours of my valuable time for a tiny refund, it's honestly just not worth the hassle and frustration.
Time is definitely valuable. That reminds me of a useful expression we often hear in conversations. I'll pass.
This is such a polite, casual way to say no thank you to an offer, invitation, or suggestion. It's much more relaxed and informal than formally declining something.
Right. If friends invite you to go bungee jumping off a really high bridge and you're absolutely terrified of heights, you might casually say, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I'll pass on that particular adventure."
I use this constantly for foods I really don't like. When someone offers me mushrooms at dinner, I politely say, "I'll pass, thanks," instead of launching into a long explanation about why I absolutely hate them.
It's so much simpler and more elegant. Now, here's a phrase absolutely everyone needs to know for those inevitable sick days. I'm feeling under the weather.
This is such a gentle, polite way to say you're not feeling well physically. It's much more professional and less dramatic than bluntly saying I'm sick or going into graphic detail about symptoms.
You might call your boss early in the morning and say, "I'm feeling a bit under the weather today, so I think I'll work from home to avoid spreading anything around the office." It's professional, considerate, but completely honest.
I absolutely love how it sounds like the actual weather is somehow affecting your health and mood. It's such a colorful, creative way to express feeling unwell without being too specific or overly dramatic about symptoms.
Now let's talk about memory and recognition with "it rings a bell."
This means something sounds somewhat familiar to you, but you can't quite remember all the specific details clearly. Like, you definitely recognize it, but the complete picture isn't totally clear in your mind.
For example, if someone mentions a certain restaurant name during conversation and you say, "That name rings a bell," you mean you believe you've definitely heard of it before somewhere, but you're not entirely sure where or when exactly.
I use this expression constantly with people's names at social events. Someone will say, "Do you know Jennifer Martinez from the marketing department?" And I'll respond, "That name definitely rings a bell, but I honestly can't place her right now."
It's so extremely useful for those frustrating tip-of-the-tongue moments when you know something. Now, here's a very reliable, responsible phrase. I'm on it.
This means you'll take care of something immediately and efficiently. It shows you're completely responsible, reliable, and ready to handle the task right away without any delays.
Right. If your boss asks you to send an important, time-sensitive email to a major client, you can confidently say, "I'm on it," to show you'll handle it immediately and professionally.
It's much more proactive and enthusiastic than just saying okay or sure. It demonstrates real enthusiasm, reliability, and professional competence. I love using it because it makes me sound extremely efficient and dependable.
Absolutely. It builds trust and confidence. Now let's discuss a fantastic storytelling phrase. Long story short.
This is absolutely perfect when you want to skip directly to the main point of a complicated story without boring people with all the unnecessary, tedious details that don't really matter.
Right. You might start telling a really complicated story about your chaotic day, then suddenly realize it's getting way too long and detailed. So you say, "Long story short, I missed my train and was 2 hours late for an important work meeting."
It's so incredibly considerate and respectful. It shows you genuinely respect people's time and attention span, and you just want to give them the most important, relevant information efficiently.
And it keeps conversations moving at a good pace, instead of getting bogged down in unnecessary details. And speaking of keeping things positive and maintaining good relationships, let's talk about no hard feelings.
This phrase is all about genuine forgiveness, understanding, and successfully moving past disagreements or conflicts. You're clearly communicating that there's absolutely no anger, resentment, or lingering negative emotions.
Right. If you and a close friend had a serious argument or disagreement, but you've talked it through and worked everything out completely, you might say no hard feelings to clearly confirm that everything is perfectly okay between you now.
I use this in competitive situations all the time, too. After losing a challenging game to someone, I might genuinely say, "Great game, absolutely no hard feelings," to show I'm a good sport and can handle losing gracefully.
It's such a mature, emotionally intelligent way to handle conflict and competition. Now, here's one for when things are genuinely confusing or incomprehensible. I can't wrap my head around it.
This means you absolutely cannot understand or figure something out, no matter how hard you try or how much effort you put in. It's completely puzzling and beyond your current comprehension.
Like when people try to explain complex cryptocurrency investments to me. I have to honestly admit, I just can't wrap my head around it at all. The entire concept is way too complex and technical for me right now.
Or when my teenager tries to explain the latest social media trends and why certain things become viral. I listen carefully, but I usually end up saying, "I honestly can't wrap my head around why that's so incredibly popular."
Let's continue with the next phrase. I'll keep you posted.
This means you'll regularly update someone with new information, progress, or developments as they become available. You're making a genuine promise to share news and keep them informed throughout the process.
Exactly. If you're anxiously waiting to hear back about a job interview or medical test results, you might tell your worried family, "I'll definitely keep you posted as soon as I hear anything at all."
It's so reassuring and comforting for the other person. They know they won't be left wondering and worrying about what's happening because you'll communicate with them regularly.
And here's a wonderfully flexible phrase for uncertain plans. Let's play it by ear.
This means you'll decide what to do based on the actual situation when it happens, rather than making completely fixed, rigid plans way in advance that might not work out.
For example, if you're planning a family picnic but the weather forecast looks uncertain and unpredictable, you might say, "Let's play it by ear and see how the weather looks tomorrow morning before we commit."
I use this with my kids constantly for weekend activities. We usually have several different ideas and options, but we play it by ear based on everyone's energy level, mood, and what we actually feel like doing.
It keeps things relaxed, flexible, and stress-free. Now, here's a phrase about finally reaching your absolute limit. That's the last straw.
This means you've finally had completely enough of something really annoying, frustrating, or unacceptable. You simply cannot and will not tolerate it for even one more second.
It comes from the old saying, "the straw that broke the camel's back." Like if your inconsiderate neighbor plays extremely loud music every single night, but tonight they also selfishly block your driveway, you might angrily think, that's absolutely the last straw.
It's that crucial moment when you finally decide you have to take serious action because you simply cannot deal with the ongoing problem anymore. Your patience is completely exhausted.
It's about reaching your absolute breaking point. Now let's talk about honestly admitting our limitations. This is out of my league.
This means something is way too difficult, advanced, expensive, or sophisticated for your current level of skill, experience, or available resources. It's honestly beyond what you can handle right now.
Right. If someone asks you to design a professional website and you've never done anything like that before, you'd honestly say, "That's completely out of my league, but I know someone who's really talented who could definitely help."
Or if you're house shopping and see a mansion that costs 3 times more than you could ever afford, you might say, "This place is absolutely beautiful, but it's definitely out of my league financially."
It's such a humble, honest way to acknowledge your current limits without feeling embarrassed. And speaking of acknowledging things, let's discuss "you've got a point."
This means you genuinely agree with what someone just said, or you think their argument or suggestion makes perfect sense. You're openly admitting they're absolutely right about something important.
Exactly. If your friend says, "We should definitely leave early to avoid the horrible rush hour traffic," you might thoughtfully respond, "You've got a really good point there. Let's go right now."
It shows you're genuinely open-minded and willing to seriously consider other people's ideas and perspectives. It's absolutely great for productive discussions and healthy debates.
Now, here's a more skeptical phrase. "I wouldn't bet on it."
This means you honestly don't think something is very likely to happen at all. You're expressing real doubt about someone's prediction, plan, or optimistic expectation.
If someone confidently says, "I think it'll be perfectly sunny all weekend long," but the weather forecast clearly shows heavy rain, you might skeptically say, "I really wouldn't bet on that."
It's a casual, non-confrontational way to disagree without being too direct or argumentative. You're just honestly expressing your doubts about the likely outcome.
And here's a phrase for diplomatically avoiding sensitive or uncomfortable topics. "Let's not go there."
This means you really don't want to discuss a particular subject because it might be uncomfortable, controversial, painful, or inappropriate for the current situation.
For example, if someone brings up your recent ex-boyfriend at a fun party, you might instantly say, "Let's not go there tonight," to smoothly change the subject to something more pleasant.
It's such a polite, diplomatic way to set healthy boundaries in conversation. You're protecting yourself or others from a potentially awkward or painful discussion.
Very tactful and considerate. Now let's end with 2 absolutely amazing phrases. First, "It blew me away."
This means something really impressed, amazed, or surprised you in an incredibly positive way. You're saying it was absolutely incredible and exceeded all your expectations.
Right. If you see an absolutely amazing live concert with incredible musicians, you might tell friends later, "The lead guitarist was so incredibly talented, it just completely blew me away."
Or when someone does something unexpectedly kind, generous, or thoughtful for you, you could genuinely say, "Your incredible generosity and thoughtfulness really blew me away completely."
And finally, let's discuss "Don't push it."
This is a clear warning that means don't try to get more than what you already have, or don't test someone's patience and generosity any further.
If your kids ask for ice cream and you generously say yes, but then they immediately ask for candy and cookies too, you might firmly say, "Don't push it," meaning they should be grateful and satisfied with what they already got.
It's like setting a clear, firm boundary. You're telling someone they're getting dangerously close to asking for way too much and risking losing what they already have.
Well, Max, I think we've covered some absolutely essential phrases today. These 25 expressions will definitely help our listeners sound much more natural and confident in their everyday English conversations.
Absolutely. Remember, everyone, the key is to practice using these in real situations. Don't just memorize them mechanically. Try to use them when the moment feels naturally right and appropriate.
Excellent advice. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Max and Mia podcast. We're so happy to be part of your English learning journey.
Yes, thank you for spending this time with us. Keep practicing, keep learning, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we grow.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share it with a friend or leave us a review. It really helps us reach more English learners around the world.
We'll be back very soon with more helpful tips, real conversations, and fun topics to keep your English improving every day.
Until then, take care, stay curious, and keep speaking English.
See you next time. Bye, everyone.